Paz, pastores e líderes, esse é um pequeno áudio para dar um panorama para você e conseguir entender melhor, ficar mais claro esse treinamento que é realmente incrível. Então, esse vídeo dessa série é sobre a cultura da Gateway, especificamente sobre o que eles chamam de aliança ou pacto social da Igreja, que nada mais é como eles mantêm e criam uma cultura e um ambiente saudável entre os líderes, staff e todas as pessoas que servem na igreja. Então, resumindo, o vídeo é esse treinamento dessa série de como deve ser a interação dos relacionamentos do ministério. O que fazer quando houver conflitos, ter alguma divergência de ideia, como dar feedback. Então esse é um vídeo norteador que a Gateway usa para todos os seus líderes, toda a sua equipe.
Todd here, and I want to talk to you today about our social covenant. Our social covenant really is broken down into two things: social covenant. And this is really talking about our culture. So the social side of it, I want you to think about in organizations, you have things like, you hear talked about politics. Politics are usually the things that are unspoken or a situation you step into and you might get yourself in trouble because you didn't know what was supposed to happen or that you can't say this or that. Well, we want to define our politics. We want to define how we behave with one another, and we're going to do that in the form of a covenant. The difference between a covenant and a contract is that in a covenant, the agreement between two people maintains even if one person violates their side of the agreement. So what I'm saying and committing to in a covenant is no matter how you interact or no matter what you say, I'm going to fulfill my end of the covenant. So that's why we've established this social covenant. And it really goes a long way of defining how we behave in our culture. Now, culture exists in any organization, in any home, no matter if you define it or not. A culture exists. Well, what we're trying to do is to define our culture. One of the ways that you define it is by saying, here's how we behave. Here's how we interact with one another. So we've established this social covenant to talk about what should relationships look like. Here at Gateway, we're spiritual, professional, and relational. And the social covenant deals with the relational side of things. How is it that we as people can come together, be spiritually minded, professional in how we interact with one another, and also highly relational. So I'm going to talk through our social covenant and give you an idea of what we mean by that. So the opening of our social covenant says this: we commit to love, value, respect, and protect each other. Therefore, we can continually choose to, and I'm going to stop right there because we have it broken down into two sections, but I want to talk about even that initial statement. We commit to love, value, respect, and protect each other. When you love, that has the effect of my attitude towards people, okay? When you value, that affects my attention towards people. When you respect, that affects my actions towards people. And when you protect, it affects my alertness towards people and their well-being. So every word that we've crafted in the social covenant has a purpose and intention of why we've chosen those words. So I want to even just as sort of the preamble to what we're saying, I wanted to define that for you so you understand what it is that you joining this team are committing to, because every one of us brings a part and a piece to adding to our culture, and you will have a great part in determining how we perpetuate the culture that exists at Gateway Church. So we've broken our social covenant into two sections. So I'm going to read the first statement again. We commit to love, value, respect, and protect each other. Therefore, we continually choose to fully invest in relationships. So the investing is the first part of this. And so we have 7 statements. I'm going to talk through them real quickly. But they're on the side of what it looks like to invest. So I want you to think about investing. And let's just use money as an example. When you invest into something, you're expecting a return, but it requires you pouring in. It requires you putting in. That's what investment does. And yet in that investment, the expectation, the hope is that you have a return. So I want to talk to you about what it looks like for us to invest in relationships. The first thing is we want to listen to each other. So we're going to do this. We're going to invest in relationships by listening to each other. I want you to think about the reality of knowing when you're talking to someone and they may be hearing you, but they're not listening to you. Or they might be hearing or even listening to you, but they're just waiting to respond. In our culture, we want to listen. We want to listen and seek to understand someone's heart and motivation. So listening to each other sounds very basic and very simple, but it's very profound in establishing our culture. The second thing is we want to encourage and affirm each other. So, when you think about just stepping into a relationship and what you bring into a relationship, you might step into something and maybe you come from an angle where you're maybe sometimes a little critical, maybe even a little pessimistic. Well, in our culture, we want to step into relationships encouraging and affirming each other. That's not to say that there's not times when you have to sort of step back a second and evaluate from a critiquing of a situation. But what is required to encourage and affirm someone, I want you to think about this, requires you to be secure in yourself. The only way you're going to be secure in yourself is if you're secure in the Lord. So wrapped in this particular point of encouraging and affirming each other recognizes that I'm secure in the Lord, therefore I'm secure in myself, that I can step into a relationship with you and encourage and affirm you because I'm not struggling with my own insecurities or what you might be thinking about me. So encouraging and affirming each other. The third point is offering, soliciting, and receiving honest feedback. I've heard the statement said that feedback is our friend. What I've experienced in my own life is that my growth is enabled or sometimes prohibited from what I do or don't know about myself. And the only way I'm going to learn and grow is by someone giving me feedback. So there's three parts of the statement. Offering feedback. So one, it's I as a person, I am able to look into someone else's life and maybe I can identify a blind spot in their life. So I want to offer feedback. I want to be proactive in doing that. The second is I want to solicit it. Again, back to the point of feedback's my friend. I want to say, hey, I just want to open myself up to you. If there's something you see in my life that you think I can grow by, or you want to speak into my life, or you see a blind spot, I want you to know you can speak that into my life. And then the third part is receiving. I want to receive it. There's nothing worse than saying, hey, give me feedback, and someone tells you something, and then you just go off and completely ignore it. The idea of being open and ready to receive the feedback that someone gives, it really postures our heart in a place of humility. Kind of wrapped up in all of our social covenant is a humble spirit. And so you can offer feedback when you posture yourself in a humble attitude, and you can receive feedback when you have an attitude of humility.